my friend.
Hello.
What is up?
Oh my God, girl. You know, I have, the world has officially opened all the way for me.
Oh,
so
nice.
and you know what? I am not used to having to drive places.
I'm sorry.
It's so weird. Like, oh gosh, I gotta leave now to make it to this thing. You know, it's very weird. So I'm a little frazzled today. But hey, everybody, welcome.
Yes, it's another week of Case Files.
With Kat.
And Ashley. So,
Yes.
what are you drinking?
Oh, I just took the very first sip. Wow. Wow. Isn't that it is. Wow, this is really good. Actually, this is coming from Odell Brewing Company out of Fort Collins, Colorado. I have had other beers of theirs, but this is called Rupture.
Oh.
Fresh grind IPA, and you can has like gears on it.
Yeah, that's good. IPAs always have the best can art.
And the hops are being
I love
fed through. It like just keeps going the whole can. It's beautiful. Really cool. Yes, IPAs do have the best art, but this is really a very light beer. Very light. Like it was just nice and crisp.
Yeah.
Almost like the Pilsner for a second. You know what I mean? Where you're just like, oh, is this a light beer? What is this?
Well, thanks for asking.
Yeah. What are you drinking? What are you drinking? I had to take another sip of this. I was like, let me just take another sip.
Guys, honestly, I'm drinking the fancy lawnmower again because I save my real good beers for when I'm at home and I don't have to drive and deal with people and chaos.
We know.
But I was going to say, since I'd never have gotten the beer reviews on our website because I am such a slacker, that I will post my Untapped username sometime on Facebook, and you can just follow me on Untapped because I put every time I go and have a new beer, I always review it on there with pictures and descriptions and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm not a fraud. I do drink beer. I just, I'm at my office currently, so no good beers here.
And you don't taste IPAs since you think they taste like sweaty socks. But what other kinds of beers do you taste and review?
Everything but IPAs, basically. Hefeweizen, stouts, pastry beers, pilsners, sours. I don't know if I said that. Ciders, red ales, Irish reds, imperial stouts. Pretty much everything but IPAs, honestly.
So there's an Imperial Red that I saw at Nobi, and I was like, what is that? And it's basically like a double IPA, but it's like a double red. Imperial Red. Yeah.
Nobi's a good place for experimenting. I love it. I love Nobi. And the Little Nobi, if you're local, the Little Nobi, they always get interesting craft beers that a lot of other places don't get, so... Anyways.
Yeah, support local places.
Yes.
So what you got for us today?
Well, we'll just start with question of the week. I assume you haven't had a chance by the fact that you've been running around. So we actually had some good answers. So the question of the week is, you've been kidnapped. 2 hours later, you are returned because you can't stop talking about what?
Okay, it would have to be one of three things. True crime in general. The Office. Nope, just the two things. Or board games. I'll do it. Board games or card games or anything. Table games. Yes. So those are the three things. So you have to be one of those three things.
I would say it'd probably just be because I would be complaining like the whole time, right? Like it's too hot. I'm so thirsty. I need a beer. Or I'd just be talking about like how I always envisioned being kidnapped by someone more famous than them and like start giving them pointers based on like cases I've read, you know, and then they would just get so annoyed with me. Like they would just take me back. So, or my dogs.
Does this have anything to do with
Absolutely
the
not.
gunman?
Oh.
With the gunman who got on the school bus with a bunch of kindergartners? He hijacked a school bus with a rifle.
Oh.
And he told the bus driver to let him off some miles later because the kindergartners are like, why are you on this bus? Are you going to kill us? Are you going to hurt the bus driver? What are you doing? How old are you? Where did you go to school? Why do you have a gun? What kind of gun is that?
That's crazy. I'm surprised they didn't freak out. I'm surprised they weren't crying and stuff. Like, I'd freak out.
He was like, that's enough. Let me off.
Yeah, no, that I don't know. I haven't heard that story. So no, this was just something I saw. There's actually a trending TikTok that goes around too, where it's pretty funny, where people talk about like what they would be talking about to get returned. And then I saw this and I liked it. So anyways, I like to hear what people want to talk about.
You could talk about like really gross things like, my period is really heavy or something.
For
like,
some, that might not even like matter to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some weird people out there. So, like I said, for me, it would either be my complaining nonstop or me like just so disappointed that I was kidnapped by them and like not someone cooler and a better kidnapper. So, has absolutely nothing to do with my story. My story does not involve kidnapping in any fashion. But
can we talk about your Manchester United t-shirt that you've got going on right now?
Sure. Why? What about it?
I don't know. I've just never seen you wear like a sports anything.
Oh, yeah. The only sports I watch is Premier League soccer. So, like, and their last final game was today. They lost, came in second. So, boo. But anyways, yes, on game day, I always wear their shirts.
Well, guess what? We probably got a whole new slew of, you need to take a picture of it. We got a whole new slew of fans now because you watch.
Yeah, that's the only sport.
Football.
Yeah.
All right. Well, awesome. Okay, what you got?
Okay, trivia. These are questions for you, so you're welcome. In 1788, the ships known as the First Fleets transported what to Australia?
In 1788?
Mm-hmm.
Prisoners.
Yay! Convict, same thing. I don't know. I just like the word convict. Convict Hill's good beer. Totally random, but that's a true fact. Escaping convicts used to drop what to throw dogs off of the scent? That's a pretty easy one.
Used to drop, like, poop? Like,
what did escaping convicts used to drop to throw the dog scent off?
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. Stop it.
Red herrings.
I should have gotten that. Hold, please hold.
I'm holding.
We're just gonna be outside.
I won't, but thank you so much. She just wanted to make a cameo.
Oh.
Have fun. Can you close the door, please? Thank you. Oh.
In the U.S., on January 1, you have the greatest risk of what?
On the 1st of January?
You have the greatest risk of what?
Falling asleep before midnight?
Being murdered.
On the 1st?
That's what this is.
What? Wow.
Yeah. At California's Disneyland, what was experienced for the first time in March of 1981?
I have no idea.
I thought you would have picked up on my theme here. It was murder. So for the first time in March of 1981, there was a murder committed at Disneyland. So that's the trivia I have. The story I'm doing tonight.
Thank you. I failed, but
yeah, I didn't really know any of those either until I looked them up. So this story was sent in through Instagram by one of our fans. She requested it a while back, but we just hadn't gotten to it. So tonight is that night.
Is it about kidnapping?
No, it's about murder. I thought again that you would have seen the theme here, Kat, is murder.
Oh God, I need more beer.
or less. I mean, depending on how you want to look at it.
First one, baby.
Sure. Okay, so there's a lot of information out there about this case because it was a really messed up situation, and it really displayed the what's the word I'm looking for? Not judgmental, but like prejudice, I guess, in a particular city. It is a Texas city. So anyways, I just pulled sources from all over. The Texas Monthly Magazine did a really good write-up on it. So did Vice. There's been movies about it, documentaries, famous people have commented on it, all kinds of stuff. So anyways, I'm just going to go in. So I'm talking about the case of Brian Deneke. Have you ever heard of this case? He was from Amarillo.
I am ashamed to say I haven't, since it's a Texas story. I'm ashamed.
So Brian was born in Wichita, Kansas, and his parents were Michael Deneke and Elizabeth Beaker. He had a brother, and they all originally lived in Kansas, but then they moved to Amarillo, Texas, starting in 1981. So Deneke was a dancer in a Boy Scouts troop during elementary school. He attended several different schools. He ended up at Amarillo High School, but he dropped out his junior year and earned his GED at 17. He was an artist, so he was really all about drawing and expressing himself. He was an artist for Stanley Marsh III's art project called Dynamite Museum, and it consisted of handmade mock road signs that were scattered all across Amarillo city streets. And he was also the vocalist of a punk rock group and aspired to become famous. So that's what he was trying to do in his life, was become like a famous musician. So he was always like described as being super friendly. He was outgoing. He was charismatic. He was a leader amongst the local punk circles there. He helped organize like tons of music events for the city. And his nickname was Sunshine because he was just very outgoing, like trying to bring people together. Of course, he had his spiked mohawk. He often wore a leather jacket, and he sported home done tattoos. He was so like very into skateboarding. And it was actually the skateboarding, like the love of skateboarding that drew him into like this punk subculture. But because he was so into like the punk scene, he suffered frequent harassment, bullying. He acquired nicknames like Punch and Fist Magnet by the tormentors. And his parents were also against his lifestyle. Like they warned him that this was going to happen. They're like, this town is prejudiced. Like you're a punk. Like we don't understand why you're doing this. Like, so he had no support from his family, like constant harassment by other kids in the town.
Bullies for not being a football player or jock or whatever.
Exactly.
That sort of,
it was the jocks that were the tormentors. So in late 1997, there was this like sort of weird teenage surf war that erupted in Amarillo. So on one side, you had like these clean cut jocks. Typically they played football. And then on the other side, you had the punk groups, the punk rockers, like their little subculture. So there were often verbal arguments, sometimes that would lead to fist fights, and they started to become more and more frequent and began escalating very quickly in the intensity of it. But often the punk side was the ones that suffered because they're the ones that would get in trouble. Like they're the ones that would get beat up. So the punk rock community often said that, they were mocked and bullied like without mercy from the sports kids, from the jocks, and nobody would do anything to stop it. So they would spit on them as they walked down the halls at school. They would rough them up in the restrooms. They would swing at them with baseball bats from the back of pickup trucks. If they saw them walking down the sidewalk, like in public, they would throw beer bottles at them and just shatter broken glass everywhere. And the police again, and most of the citizens in the town, they just literally turned a blind eye because naturally people are dicks to anyone who's not normal. So they just viewed it as like they chose to be that way. So they deserved to be like bullied and mocked. So sadly, on December 12th of 1997, this turf war turned deadly. Prior to December 12th, there had been some rumors of like a big fight that was brewing. The 17-year-old football player by the name of Dustin Camp had gotten into an argument with several punks, and Dustin was on the junior varsity football team, and he had been known for harassing these kids. So the argument escalated, and his windshield had been smashed, though other kids deny that that's what happened. The punk said that he had taken several swipes at them with his car, and that if his windshield got broken, it was because like they were trying to defend themselves, but there was never any like proof on if his windshield was actually smashed and who did it or what. So now we fast forward to December 12th. Dustin was in his car, which was a Cadillac. His friend Rob was in the car, who was also a teammate of his. And then Rob's friend, Elise Thompson, she was in the back seat. She was actually super smart, and she was set to graduate as the valedictorian of their class, which would have been class of 1999. And she admitted that she had heard these rumors, but she didn't really think like anything was going to happen. She just thought they were going out for like a ride, like around town, because that's what they did there. There wasn't any like entertainment there. They would just kind of cruise the streets and see what was happening.
See, when the kids don't have stuff to do, bad things happen.
So Dustin and his friends were driving down Western Street, which is the main street, and it's also the same street where the previous argument had broken out, where he claims someone smashed his windshield. So outside of the coffee shop, which is where the argument had happened, stood a large group of football players in their varsity jackets and a dozen of other students who had come to watch the fight that the rumors had been circulating about. So the football players were fully prepared for this fight, like that they were going to start. So Elise started to become uncomfortable by what was happening, and she was worried that it was going to escalate, and she had asked Dustin and Rob to please take her home. And at first, Dustin was like, yeah, okay, I'll take you home. But that's not what happened at all. So according to Elise, Dustin steered his Cadillac toward the action, weaving through the boys, and it was described that Dustin seemed to just kind of snap. So veering toward the crowd of punks, he knocked one of the punks off his feet and onto the hood of the car.
Oh my God.
But the kid got up and he was fine and he ran off. So it was at this point that Rob, the guy that was his friend, was like, you know what? This isn't worth it. Let's go. Let's get out of here. This is too much. And again, Dustin acted like he was getting on board with that. He started to drive like really fast towards the exit. But at some point, he changed his mind. He turned his car around. He jumped a median and started to pick up speed. And that's when he spotted 19-year-old Brian Deneke. So he drove his car right at him. Brian turned for an instant as the headlights drew like near him, but he didn't have time to move, and Dustin hit him with his car and then ran over him. Brian had rolled onto the hood before sliding underneath the car, and Elise said that she had closed her eyes and prayed that it was only the median that she had felt underneath because it was dark and she couldn't really see. But when she turned around, she saw Brian's body, and she had asked Dustin to stop, but Dustin had not only intentionally sped up, jumped the median, targeted him, and hit him, he like full on ran him over and wasn't going to stop. Elise says that when she, said, hey, you need to stop, that Dustin started like basically bragging and saying, I'm a ninja in my caddy. I bet he liked that one. And like was excited that he had ran Brian over. So again, she looked over her shoulder out the back window and she could see Brian on the ground in a pool of blood. And she would later tell police that she was screaming and she couldn't really remember what else was happening. Like it was too much for her. And during the court case, she actually testified saying I was having trouble forming words. The emotions were so intense. I was overwhelmed. It was insane. So Dustin never once stopped the Cadillac. He never looked back. He sped off down the highway. He just left Brian there to die. Like, he knew that Brian was there and he just did not care. So, so he did get arrested for this, but like, they drug out the court date as much as possible. It was months and months before he ever went to trial. And the city was like super divided because like a lot of them were like, oh, he needs to be tried because he killed someone. And then the other half was like, that kid probably deserved it. He was a punk. Like, what did he think was going to happen? Like, Dustin's a clean cut kid. And then Brian was like a menace to society. And so that's the city was super divided on the matter. So Dustin was charged with first-degree murder. During his trial, his defense claimed that he had acted in defense of a friend whom he claims that he saw Brian Deneke was attacking. Dustin's defense attorney was Warren L. Clark and defended him by trying to shift the blame on Deneke and the punk community. So let me stop here. So when he says that he saw Brian attacking his friend, at least said there would have not been a way for, basically his friend would have also been hit if Brian was attacking his friend because he hit Brian like head on. So Clark, the defense attorney, was portraying the punks as violent thugs and went as far as calling them armed goons. He used the incidents from Deneke's past that made him look violent and claimed he was an aggressor on the night of his death. The defense also claimed that the witnesses for the prosecution were punks who lied under oath. In contrast to the punks, the defense characterized the alleged murderer as a wholesome, clean-cut youth. He emphasized that Dustin Camp was normal, and he emphasized his normalcy, claiming he was a good Christian, a good Texan, but most importantly, Dustin was a good football player. And isn't that like just the most important thing here is that we have a good football team for Amarillo. So at one point, Warren Clark holds up Deneke's jacket that he was wearing the night.
That person can just fuck right off.
So he holds up Deneke's jacket that he was wearing the night that he died. And on the jacket, there's this patch that says destroy everything. And what he told the jury is this is a message we want to send our children for generations to come. This is what the weapon wielding goon wore the night of the altercation. Looks to me like he was on a mission to kill. But it was explained by someone else to the jury that the Destroy Everything patch was actually a reference to Deneke's favorite band and stood for destroying all preconceptions about everyone. So basically what Brian stood for and what he was trying to say with this patch and everything that he did was don't prejudge people for how they look or who their friends are or whatever. Like,
right.
And so here's Dustin's attorney. He was now using this against him, basically saying that he deserved to die strictly based on the way he looked and dressed. So, as mentioned,
that is,
yeah, it's this. As I was doing this research, I was just like, this is pissing me off so bad because, like, literally, these kids, like, were just trying to do what they enjoy and living their life, and it never would have gone to violence had these fucking football players never started with them. Like, they never instigated it. The football players were always the ones mocking them, harassing them, bullying them, throwing shit at them. Like,
and it just escalated. I wonder how he treated his women.
As mentioned, Dustin's attorney routinely brought up Deneke's past as part of being arrested for defacing public property. However, the prosecution pointed out that football players were often seen partying, they were drinking, always speeding around town. They would have bonfires wherever the hell they wanted, and the cops never would show up. They never blinked an eye. And football players were routinely quoted as saying that they never got in trouble and they could do whatever they wanted because they run the town. And clearly
Welcome
that is
to Texas.
true. So, hold on, I need a drink. So, basically, they weren't lying. I mean, this case was kind of proving their point that they could just do whatever and get away with it because, no one was even like actively like going after the football players and asking them to stop or like punishing them for their behavior or even like telling them there might be consequences. It was always the punk's fault. Like these
It's
other
always
kids
boys will be boys.
Yeah. So the punks who testified were friends of Deneke and consistently pointed out that he was the victim. So Elise, who was in the car with Dustin and Dustin's friend, was one of the prosecution's witnesses. She incriminated Dustin and said she did not see him acting in defense of a third person, period. So at this point, they also interviewed the medical examiner. He described Brian's injuries in full detail. And it was like, when I was reading this, like, it was really hard. And they said, like, it was really hard for the medical examiner when he was, like, talking about everything. It said that it was described that Brian had been conscious when he was dragged under the wheels of the Cadillac. So after he'd been hit head on and Dustin ran him over, he was still alive at that point. And there was a small chance he could have survived. Small. They said the impact was so severe that his collarbone had been completely torn free from his shoulder.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So, although Dustin had been charged with murder, prepare Kevin. Although Dustin had been charged with murder, the jury only found him guilty of voluntary manslaughter, sentenced him to no jail time, sentenced him to 10 years probation and a $10,000 fine. He got 0 days in jail, no days in jail, period. They said that it wasn't intentional and that he just had to pay this fine. So later on in life, he does violate his probation on something else and spends like a couple years in jail, but not for the actual murder. It was for some dumb, like petty thing that he did. So the jury had only deliberated for 3 hours, and it was more of like they were just kind of trying to waste time. Like they had already knew like they weren't going to find him guilty. So both Dustin's attorney and the district attorney found the sentence to be uncommonly mild. Like even his own attorney was a little shocked. The jury refused to comment after the trial, citing that the welfare of the family, like saying that basically they didn't want to bring up anything. They didn't want anyone to know who they were. But there was an alternate juror named Wade Colvin, and he said he was so surprised that the jury did not convict Dustin of murder and opted for the manslaughter conviction instead. He said, "What stuck with me more than anything is I felt like Deneke was running away and Dustin had a chance to stop his car, but didn't." He goes on to say he believes that the jury gave Dustin a second chance because of his youth, saying, "I had those thoughts too about him being so young, but he did wrong." I don't think it was because he was young. I think it's because he was a football player and people are pieces of shit. And small towns like that, unfortunately, that's what they care about are their football teams. Like especially back then, I'm sure times have changed now, but back then it was a small town. Football was life. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, okay?
It's I don't know if it's any different. It's, there's still an otherization. If you don't look like everybody else, then, you're not going to be happy if you don't fit in, but what if you don't fit in? Are you going to not be your true self? That's horrible. It's a horrible thing to teach people. And
that's what they would, like, his parents would kind of tell him is, like, you're not going to be happy as this kid. Like, you need to try and fit in. And
you're not going to be happy not being yourself.
And his brother often said he also didn't understand why Brian was this way. But they did show up to the trial, and they were, like, they wanted Dustin to go to jail for murder because at the end of the day, that was still their son. And he still didn't deserve to die for being who he was. for just living. And so
imagine if people just let people be who they want to be. Imagine how great that would be. Like, listen, you want to wear a pink unitard and ride a tricycle all around town and sing songs? You go right on, pink unitard guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
but, that will never happen. It will never happen. People will always be judged for not fitting into what people deem as a normal little box. And it's very sad.
I am not saying anything bad about pink unitard guy. I am just saying, imagine if we just let people do that. Let your freak flag fly, people.
But unfortunately, cases like this are not unique. This shit happens all the time. People get targeted and they get beat up and they get bullied and they get killed for not being normal or what other people deem normal. And it's so aggravating because they very rarely have to face real consequences because they're young and they didn't know better or whatever. And it's just there have been so many cases, where autistic kids get beat up or gay teenagers get beat up or different races or whatever. Like, it's so ridiculous. So anyways, the light sentence shook the community. Even though the community originally had been divided on the situation, they still felt like that was
somebody got away with murder.
Yeah. So the light sentence shook the community. It made people so mad. And so fearing reprisals, the judge sealed the names of every juror that worked the case, and none of them have ever spoken out on their own. They've never done an interview. If you weren't in the courtroom, you didn't know who the jurors were, supposedly. I assume people in the courtroom never told anyone. But yeah, so callers, people from the town and surrounding cities, they started calling talk radio programs. People started debating on whether Amarillo was a tolerant place, which clearly it wasn't. The New York Times were getting letters from people in Amarillo about it. So many of the angry citizens sent emails to news stations about the case. There was one email that read, "If all you get for murdering someone with your car is 10 years probation with a felony-free record, then I can only ask that Mr. Camp not to let me see him walking around." And that kind of bitterness, it didn't wane. It was shared amongst lots of people. It lasted a long time. There was a recent poll through the Amarillo Globe News that revealed that 74% of the respondents still believed that the punishment did not fit the crime, and the emotions surrounding this case were still very high. They just could not believe that this kid, God damn it. Okay, it kept recording. Could not believe that this kid just got away with murder and they weren't doing anything about it because he was a football player. So the mayor of Amarillo, his name was Kell, he attempted to distance the town from the verdict. He said it was not a community verdict and that it was just the verdict of 12 people. But nonetheless, the murder trial had prompted the mayor to emphasize tolerance for differences and mutual respect. Deneke's father, he wasn't surprised by the lenient verdict. He actually was quoted saying, "Quite honestly, we have been prepared for that the whole time. If you pay attention to what happens in the criminal justice system, this is not unusual at all." Which is a really sad statement because it's true. It was true back then and it's still true today. So after this happened, two filmmakers, they came together and they created this movie called Bomb City, which is in reference to the town Amarillo. They have chemicals or something, I don't remember, but it was in a reference to something else in the city. But the movie itself covers Brian's life and his death and the entire bullshit. I'm sorry, the entire bullshit of the sentence. It covers the biases and privileges that allowed such this unjust sentence to even happen. And they draw from court records and they do interviews with his family and friends and witnesses and other people of the town. So Deneke's death, just like I said, really just turned Amarillo upside down, and it really touched a nerve with the entire American punk scene. Deneke has been memorialized in songs by famous bands like Dropkick Murphys, The Undead, Total Chaos, amongst many others, which are like really big like punk bands. Bomb City, of course, like I said, was a movie documenting his story and his death. There's this one scene from Bomb City, and it includes an interview that Manson had done. He didn't do it for the movie. He did it in response to post-Columbine. But he went to say that he felt it implied or also worked for Deneke's death and gave permission for Bomb City to use it. And so this is his quote. "White teenagers, why are they mad?" Manson asked in his speech. "They're white. They're spoiled. Is it because that America is a lie? Is adult entertainment really killing our children? Or is killing our children entertaining adults?" And so basically he was speaking to a specific moment in the late 90s when adults were so hyper concerned about the going on of like different teenage clique and cultures. And like his central point was that violence stems not from diversity, but a culture obsessed with winners and losers. He basically said adults are so focused on having the best kid and being the best sports player and being the best at this and that. And they don't want a kid that's different, and they don't want a kid who isn't successful in this and that. And he said, that's what's killing children, because parents and adults teach their kids these things, and then they go out into the world and they bully people who don't fit that box because they're not like them. They're not, and so it just creates this divide from the get-go. And that's what he was saying about it. So in addition to the the movie, there was, the case was featured in 1999 on Dateline, 2020, and NPR. There was also an MTV documentary in 2000 called Criminal: Punks vs. Preps. The widely syndicated City Confidential had an episode about the case. There was actually a play written by David, I don't know how to say the last name, Bucci. But he wrote the play in 2000, and it was called Manslaughtered, and it was performed several times. And then there was numerous tribute concerts for Brian. During the 10th anniversary of his death, there were 25 concerts across the U.S. and Canada in his honor. Half of the money raised from these events went to National Organization for Parents of Murdered Children, and the other half to various anti-prejudice causes. To this date, he has had 11 songs written in his honor. Again, concerts still happen in his honor. People still talk about this case and how unfair it was and how just unjust the whole thing is. Dustin Camp is not in jail, of course, anymore. He went on to live his life after he got out from violating his probation. And that is the story of Brian Deneke from Amarillo, Texas, who died for being different. So,
I won't lie that I think that both my husband and I we were different. We were different kids. I did theater. He was an art. He was a comic book nerd before comic book nerds were so cool, right? Marvel.
Yeah.
Jason is in a Spider-Man comic book from when he was like 12 years old. He is in the Marvel universe. That's how nerdy the man is, right?
Yeah.
And we got to go to a high school that was, I won't even say tolerant. It was like, of course you're different. Like there wasn't anybody that was the same, and you found your clique, but even within your clique, you were all very, very different. And we know where we live now in Texas. Man, everybody's a jock. They're going to be jocks. Yeah. They're going to play sports. Everybody's doing that. My kids don't like to do that. I've got a theater kid and an artist, just like Jason and I. And, and I hope that they don't experience,
Yeah.
my daughter having blue and purple hair in second grade and being just way cooler than I have ever been in my whole life.
Yeah.
Having her, you know, there is a concern. Like I know that there's going to be a concern for her to want to fit in. I don't want her to lose her individuality though.
Yeah.
And so that is a worry for me. So I hear the story. It just breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart so much.
When I was in middle school, I went to school on the East Coast, and it was very racially divided. I went to a school where it was actually reversed in most cases. I was the only white kid. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard. And then in the town I happened to live in, there was a high school that was primarily white students. And then there was a high school that was primarily like black students. And then they merged them into one high school. And there were so many fights and violence. And I'm so glad I moved, because I moved right before high school started. But it was just crazy to me, because as a kid, I didn't realize, I mean, I knew there was prejudice and stuff, but I didn't know how bad it was, because I was just a kid. And then when I moved here to Texas, to the small town that I lived in and went to high school, I was just dumbfounded by how high some kids were put on a pedestal. And if you weren't a sports player or whatever, you got in trouble for anything and everything. Everything was your fault. You know, you look different. Like, I would get in trouble for things I would wear to school, and I would see other like cheerleaders wearing things way worse than that, and just not, like, I would be wearing a shirt that had like a saying or something on it, and they would call my grandmother to drive 45 minutes to the school to bring me another shirt when there was other kids walking around. You know what I'm saying? So it's just sad, like, that it doesn't ever change. It doesn't ever get better. Like, people, even adults, are assholes. Like, if you're not what they feel are normal, and it's just really sad. Like, I'm sorry that you have children going through it, but I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that, because I'm so glad. I would end up in jail if someone said something to my child. So.
Oh, I will end up in jail. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead. I know how to cover my tracks. I know. Yeah, I know how to cover my tracks. No, but there is a certain amount of, I think what we have to remember is that, and I don't know how you teach it, but what am I trying to say? We are taught to hate. We are born loving. We're like, oh, you're a kid, I'm a kid, yes! And then it's the adults kind of stepping in at an early point going, no, not them, they're not okay. See, they look different from us. For whatever reason. Is it the clothes that they're wearing? They're not as nice as ours. Is it the color of their skin? Is it the way they do their hair? Is it they don't play sports? Is it because bloop, blop, bleep, blop? And if we aren't teaching our children that, then there's just, we got to start with them. And we have to remember, like, we work with people who don't think like us. We work and live in a community with people who don't think like us or talk like us or dress like us or look like us. And we all can live together in peace and harmony. Why aren't we passing that down? Why aren't we just telling our kids, like, hey, man, be you. I'm going to appreciate who you are. And I'm good. And I hope that you appreciate who I am, and we can live together. Just being able to disagree as like adults and humans and kids, and just like, that's who we are. Like,
my brother Kevin is autistic, and the amount, like, my mom had to withdraw him from school and homeschool him because the nonstop bullying and harassment was just off the charts. Like, they would put their hands on him, they would tease him, beat him up, make him cry, call him. But that, it's not an isolated case. You see it all day, every day, and it's just so sad. And in this case, Brian ended up dead, and a whole community was changed because of it. And the responsible party didn't even have to pay consequences. So. Well, it's very unfortunate.
Gave Kevin a workout tonight, but God damn it, you just didn't hear him, but he was screaming. Listen, this is a very upsetting show, but man, if you feel like you don't fit in, reach out to us. Talk to us, man. Because seriously, we don't fit in. Trust us. We do not fit in either. Okay. Seriously. All right. Let me go ahead and do our answers to the question of the week. We've got a lot. So I'm going to go. Okay. So you've been kidnapped. 2 hours later, you're returned because you can't stop talking about, Vanessa says, voting. It's true. She'd probably be registering people to vote, I think, is probably what she would have said. Trudy says cooking. That's great. Jesse, dolls and crochet. They might want to keep you. Why the Noelle says, why the kidnapper is the way they are. What led them to make these decisions in life? Basically, I'd psychoanalyze them the entire time.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Sarah says, my kids and golden doodles. Glenn says, only fools and horses, beer and food. Oh, that's so good. RC is just beer, just a Homer gif of beer. Luann says Chris Reed. And then Kathy says dogs. They might like that though. See, I don't know.
I know. If
Okay.
I was the kidnapper, I'd be all about it. We would never stop talking.
Okay, so Clayton says obscure 80s and 90s Saturday morning cartoon references. I am so there.
Yes.
Next time you come over for game night, we are doing that. Diane Overman says rescue pets. Yay! David says The Simpsons. Oh, they might enjoy that. I don't know. Melissa says food. I'm hungry. What am I going to eat?
Yep.
Robin says axe throwing, of course.
Oh.
Anne says charter school fraud. Katie says dogs or Gossip Girl. That those two are equal.
I could talk for 2 hours about Gossip Girl. Girl, let's talk.
Oh my God. And then Kelly says my dogs and Mayor of Easttown or Easton? Easttown. And then Andrea says either Toastmasters or my cat Eli.
Can you imagine talking about Toastmasters to a kidnapper? Like trying to explain everything?
Yes.
The Toastmaster skills would really come into play there. Your skills you learn from Toastmasters.
And let me tell you about using the word and so.
You've said 37 times during this kidnapping.
You maxed out.
Failed.
All right, what you get on Instagram?
Okay, so Mrs. Misery, MZ3, she says, I can't stop talking about case files.
Oh, okay, well, you win.
That's what I said. Best answer. I don't know if she meant our case files, but that's what I'm going with, so.
Answer.
And then our other friend said Dune, and I said, which one? Because, there's comics, there's games. I don't know if you know, there's comics, games, all kinds of stuff. And he said, yes. He said, if kidnapped, I would start at the beginning, and after 2 hours, I'd only be done describing the ecology of, I can't say the word, ARRAKIS. Arrakis? I can't say the word. But that's what his answer was. So Dune would definitely take up,
I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry, dude.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce the word. Very sorry. We all know I don't know how to speak English. So, anyways, that was so those were the answers from Instagram.
English is your first language.
That's iffy. So anyways, those were the answers for Instagram. Thank you guys for answering. That was really good. That was our first question of the week for season 4, and you guys did not disappoint. If you have suggestions for question of the week, if you see something that you think is funny, please send it to us through Facebook, or if you know us personally, message it to us, because we love them. And we love hearing your answers. We always go back and read them, even if we don't read them on the episode. So
I have one for next week. It's not a super good one like yours, but I do have one, so it can be replaced.
You're so prepared. Look at you. Normally, guys, we do everything the week of the episode, and we've pre-planned the next 14 episodes. And she's got the question of the week going. We are somewhat on it, even though our audio failed multiple times this evening. But whatevs.
Get kid interruptions.
You all
lots
know
of
that
noises.
Because it will all be edited out by the time you listen to this, I think, hopefully. So
I think
you'll have a very interesting episode.
I'm going to keep the kid in there because that's just... we're going to go outside. Okay.
Anyways, guys, thank you
everybody.
so much for listening.
Thank you so much. We love you more than words can ever express, especially after this episode. Especially after this episode,
Yes.
My words at the end of every episode ring so true tonight. Please keep them on your hearts, but please be kind to one another. This is it. This is all we've got.
If you need a friend, message us. We are always around. Me and my purple hair.
And she's got her Manchester shirt on. So, I mean, now you really have to reach out if you're on the other side of the pond. But we love you. Come back next week. We will be here, and we cannot wait to regale you with another story.
Woo! Fancy words up in here.
I know. Speaking
of
our new end music?
Yeah.
No. That was just the Little Mermaid. Okay, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Be kind to one another. Please, 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 please.
Bye. Bye.